The Dirt with me, Mike Howell, an economics podcast where I present the down and dirty agronomic science to help grow crops and bottom lines. Inspired by eKonomics.com, farming's go-to informational resource, I'm here to break down the latest crop nutrition research, news, and issues, helping farmers make better business decisions through actionable insights. Let's dig in. Well, good morning, everybody. We're glad you're tuning back in this week. This week, we are on location again. We are here in Calvary at the Calvary Stampede. We're doing some events around the rodeo and doing a focus on Canadian agriculture. To help us do that today, we've got a familiar face in the studio with us. We've got Lyle Cowell. Lyle, welcome back to the Dirt.
Always good to be here, Mike, and welcome to Canada.
It is good to be here. A little smoke outside this morning, but other than that, everything seems to be quite nice. I'm really enjoying this cooler weather. It's quite different than it is at home.
I bet it is.
Lyle, if you will, remind our listeners who you are and what you do before we get into it.
You bet. So Lyle Cowell, I work as an agronomist in Canada, covering the agronomy of the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur products that Nutrien manufactures. And in terms of agronomy, in terms of sustainability of those nutrients, just trying to do our best to make sure that our farm customers and the public understand soil fertility.
Okay, well, Lyle, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Flying in yesterday, I was routed from Winnipeg over to Calgary and got to see a lot of stuff from the air. Looks like the canola was in full bloom, and
you bet.
Maybe some that wasn't blooming. Tell us a little bit about how the crop's progressing this year and if there's any issues going on right now.
Well, crops are early this year, so you got to see canola in full bloom. Sometimes it's not quite yet. And it's always very nice to see from the air, lots of yellow. And generally, probably the route that you took in your flight was over some pretty green fields as well. Through that region of Western Canada and that flight path, rainfall's been pretty good. Generally, crops are quite good this year in Western Canada. There's always going to be a dry corner in Western Canada. It's just the way it is. We're dryland farmers mostly. And but in the end, we're in generally pretty good condition for a number of reasons. And early crops. So pretty good crops, quite early crops. We're sitting pretty good right now.
Okay, well, that's what we like to hear. Everybody's anxious to get this crop finished up and get it out of the field and start planning for next year. So
yeah, that's that time of year we already have to start thinking about the 2026 crop. You bet.
Yep. Lyle, it seems like every time we talk, we kind of compare differences between Canadian agriculture and the southeast part of the U.S. where I'm located. And yep. There's an issue that we haven't really talked about, and that's the fertilizer storage issue. Now, in my part of the world, we basically store no granular fertilizer on farm, and most of the retail locations want to have it down to bare bones by the time we get the current crop fertilized. They don't want to carry anything over and get it there just in time. I understand that's a little different in Canada.
It is. Well, we would like to be that way. We would like to not store fertilizer on farm or at retails for long periods of time, but we do. And there's a number of reasons, both that we have to and that we can. So we have to because some of our fertilizer has to come from a long ways away, and that's in particular phosphorus fertilizer. We don't have a phosphorus reserves that are being mined in Canada, so we have to bring phosphorus from somewhere else. And so that's key to the dry blends that we use, and means that we have to start putting those products into storage. Another part of the have to part is that in Western Canada in particular, we have a very, very short seeding season. We'll probably start seeding late April, early May, and be done within 3 weeks. Very, very short seeding season. So there's just not enough time and logistics to have everything in place if we wait. So that's primarily the reasons that we have to store some. We can do it because, unlike you, we have a pretty miserably long, cold winter. And so we can put fertilizer into storage and it stays usually in pretty good condition over those cold months in winter time. So some storage, some fertilizer for 2026 is already going into store now. and that will continue right through the summer, fall, and winter time as we prepare for the next crop.
Well, I just can't get over that. If we tried to store fertilizer at home like that, with our humidity, we would end up with about half of the fertilizer we put in the bin when we went to get it out next spring.
Yeah.
I understand y'all don't have the humidity issue here, but there is a little bit of humidity from time to time, and
Yeah.
I see a clumping issue. I hear talk about that.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about the issue with the clumping of the fertilizer.
Yeah, well, like we like to say, well, it's cold here in winter, but it's a dry cold. And so when we fill in wintertime, when it's very cold, we usually have no problem at all. But we also start fills in summer and fall. Sometimes the fertilizer itself is quite warm, no matter when you put it into storage. And because of that, we still have some risk to water absorption from the air. You can get, over the course of time, very slow absorption of water from the air. In the end, fertilizers are salts or behave as salts, and salts absorb moisture from the atmosphere. That's just the way it is. And so we have that problem, this very slow absorption of water from the atmosphere. And then we also run into problems with condensation. So we can have very wide fluctuations in temperature, in particular in spring. It might be minus 15 degrees Celsius at night and plus 15 degrees Celsius during the day. And those fluctuations of temperature can cause direct condensation of water that can drip onto fertilizer. It can happen in storage. It can happen in application equipment. So those are the two primary ways that water gets introduced into the fertilizer. And it can certainly be a problem. The type of equipment that we seed and apply fertilizer with really has very little tolerance of clumping of fertilizer, forming lumps in fertilizer. So we really have to be aware of the problem and manage it as best as we can.
Lyle, you talked about the application equipment, and I've seen the pictures of the big air seeders. I kind of know what you're talking about. I've never seen those actually running. Hopefully next spring I can get up here and we can get a little hands-on demonstration with some of that. But in my part of the world, most of the granular fertilizer goes out with a spreader buggy or a spreader truck, and if it is some small clumps, we can just blow that right on through the back. We are getting some of those machines in and putting it out with the seed now a little bit, but talk a little bit about the machinery and how it works.
Right. So most crops in Western Canada are seeded with air drills, so a pressurized tank where the seed and fertilizer is stored while seeding. And then the fertilizer and seed then goes through pipes to enter into an airstream through a number of hoses, enters into a manifold to distribute it to each opener. And so it goes through a lot of steps within that airstream to finally get to the seed. Most of Western Canada is direct seeded without any tillage whatsoever. So we're using relatively low rates of fertilizer that have to be very precisely placed because we're using really low rates of fertilizer, and trying to do it without it disturbing the soil at all. And so we end up with a machine that has pretty narrow turns and twists as the fertilizer and seed goes through to the soil. And so for that reason, clumping and moisture within the system can be a problem. And on top of that, there's rollers and other things within the delivery of these fertilizer that, again, we just can't tolerate having moisture within that system.
So Lyle, at home, I know we've had some issues from time to time. Comes a shower of rain and the guys get knocked out of the field for a day or two and come back, and it's a big giant ball of fertilizer in that spreader truck, and it takes shovels and pickaxes and sledgehammers and everything else to break it up just to get it out of the truck. Obviously you can't do that in these air seeders.
No.
What can we do to address this problem?
Well, it's not easy to deal with, but there's steps that we can take. So for one, we have to be careful with multi-nutrient blends. So an individual fertilizer product will absorb moisture at a given rate, but when you blend fertilizers together, those fertilizers will absorb moisture even faster. So for example, if you combine urea and ammonium sulfate, that blend will absorb moisture to a greater extent and faster than if urea or ammonium sulfate is by itself. So we have to be really aware of those specific blends and which ones are highest risk. The storage that we use tends to be quite good. We have to maintain the quality of the storage. A lot of it's in bins, especially on farm, it's in bins. At retails, it's at bins or sheds. And just have to control the moisture conditions within those facilities as well. And then just to be aware of how fertilizers absorb moisture. So this long-term absorption of water, we just have to keep an eye on the storage over the course of time. Sometimes we need to do that a lot better. If it's grain in storage, we check it every week. We should be checking fertilizer every week as well when it's in storage. And then the problem with condensation, that's hard to manage. For example, when you're seeding, an air drill is pressurized with a fan, and often we do have quite high humidity in the spring. So it's pulling that warm, moist air right into the tank that has the fertilizer in it. And we have to then, again, comes back to checking things, checking your lines, checking your rollers, checking your manifolds, just to make sure that there's no buildup of fertilizer starting to occur. Don't wait till there's a problem. Be aware of what can cause a problem and be ahead of the game. Don't wait for a problem. Those are the main things. There's not a lot of other things you can do. There are products that you can add to fertilizer that can help reduce the contact between fertilizer prills. So there's those products in the marketplace. The product ESN is actually one of the primary reasons that farmers in Western Canada use a lot of ESN, is that it resists absorption of water from the atmosphere. And so that is a big deal. It helps. And again, one of the reasons that farmers use ESN actually isn't about agronomy. It's about storability and flowability of the fertilizer with the blend. So farmers will often use a urea blend with, say, 20 to 30% of ESN, and that really improves, the storability and flowability of the entire blend. So those little things that you can do, every step helps that little bit, just a little bit more.
Yep. Lyle, you mentioned the ESN. I know you've done a lot of work around that in the last few years. I've seen some excellent pictures you've got. Actually got some publications out about that. I think those are published on our website. If anybody's interested in that, you can go take a look at that. One other thing, back home, there's a few, not very many storage sheds, but some of them have heated floors and kind of climate-controlled environments. Some aeration going through there to help keep the humidity out. Are any of the on-farm storage systems like that here in Canada?
We're not there yet, and probably it's a direction that we need to consider to look outside of our region. It's always interesting, like I said, when you start talking, Mike, that it's always interesting that we often have this opportunity to contrast and compare how things are done in your region to mine. And we could learn a lot from what you do in your area and apply that to Western Canada, I think, to improve our storage and management. We should be learning from regions that have a lot of problems in storage. And we're not using those methods of improving storage, but I really do think that we should be looking at those and just continue to work with it. I should give a bit of a shout out to in Saskatoon, Nutrien has what's called the Nutrien pilot plant, and Courtney Rochuk at the pilot plant and her team have done some excellent work with us, work for us to a better understanding fertilizer blend quality, measuring the compactability, this whole problem of forming clumps within storage. So I think it's important to realize too, for our customers, that we are trying to improve knowledge and future handling of fertilizer. We have a problem. The best way to deal with it is to try to understand it a little bit better.
Yep. Well, Lyle, we've spent a good bit of time this morning talking about the issue and talking about some things that we can do to address it. I think it's important that we make people aware of this issue to better understand it and understand how they can help prevent that problem. Do you have any closing comments or take-home message you want to leave our listeners with before we sign off for today?
I think the one thing that we should consider on farm and at retails is that, sure, preventing clumping, preventing water absorption is a problem within equipment. It's a problem agronomically if we can't properly apply fertilizer. But there's an aspect to it that I worry about a lot, and that's a safety aspect. If you have absorption of moisture in sheds, it can cause cliffs of fertilizer in sheds. It can suddenly release and cause risk to people. And in bins, I've seen farmers put themselves in the way of trouble, frankly, when they have fertilizer that is not coming out of a bin. And we have to stop and slow down and think about how we're storing this fertilizer, monitor it constantly, not wait till it's a problem, because it's about more than just the fertilizer. It's about farm safety and employee safety at retails to make sure nobody gets hurt in all of this. So I think that's an important part of this question that we sometimes forget.
Yep, great message, Lyle. We definitely want everybody to get home safe every day. We have way too many accidents in the industry as it is. So anything we can do to help prevent that is going to be one step ahead. Lyle, we really appreciate you taking time to come in and visit with us today. I think we got a lot out of this episode. Listeners, thank you for tuning in this week. And if you will, hang around for just a couple of moments. We'll be right back with segment 2. Farming isn't farming without questions. And now there's a place to go for answers. At eKonomics, an entire team of agronomists is waiting and ready to help for free. No question is too big or too small. Visit Nutrien-eKonomics.com and submit your question with the Ask an Agronomist feature. Listeners, welcome back for segment 2. If you've been listening for very long this season, you know this is a part of the show where we ask one of our agronomists a question about agronomy. Today, we have Dr. Carl Wyatt back in the studio with us. Carl, welcome back to the dirt.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Carl, today our question is on pH. Our question is, what is soil pH and why is it so important in crop production? And then we want to follow that up with what is the ideal soil pH?
Sure. So that soil pH, that's something you can find on your soil test report usually. So if you've got one of those nearby, maybe on the dash of your truck, pull over first and then take a look at the soil test. You'll see a pH number, and that's telling you how acidic, neutral, or alkaline your field is. So how many hydrogen atoms are in the soil. So if it's got a lot of hydrogen atoms, it's going to be acidic. If it's got that perfect amount of hydrogen, that soil pH is going to be 7. If it has a lot fewer of hydrogen atoms, it'll have a alkaline or basic reading, so above 7 on the pH scale. So that's how to interpret that scale. What is the pH of my soil? And this is important because pH is one of your big controlling factors for kind of directing the nutrient availability conditions of a soil. So we'll pick on phosphorus, for example. Under acidic conditions, phosphorus can set up that chemistry where it ties up with aluminum, iron, or manganese, and therefore you've got a fertilizer program that won't work as well. That aluminum and phosphate, when it comes together, not super available. Under more alkaline conditions, so pH of above 7, calcium and phosphate can come together and form a mineral, same thing that your teeth are made out of, but a mineral that renders that phosphorus unavailable to your crop. So that's why we manage it so carefully, because if we can manage those pH conditions towards 7 for most crops, we tend to have fewer of those nutrient sort of chemistry reactions that we don't want, and we tend to have more applied nutrients available to the crop. I said there were some exceptions because we have crops like blueberries and cranberries. They love acidic soils, so you need to actually purposefully drop the pH to grow really good blueberries and cranberries. On the alkaline side, we have crops that are more tolerant of a higher pH, and we just sort of manage around the pH because it's going to cost too much money to drop it. So we just figure out how to supply more nutrients because we know that calcium phosphate reaction is going to happen.
Carl, that's why we grow so many blueberries here in the Poplarville, Mississippi area. Our pH is naturally pretty low. We like to think we've got the best blueberries in the world, and if you don't believe that, come out the second weekend in June to the Blueberry Jubilee here in Poplarville.
Sounds fun.
Carl, once again, we want to thank you for joining us. We really enjoy these Ask the Agronomy sessions. Listeners, thank you for tuning in this week. And as always, if you need more information on anything we've talked about today, you can visit our website. That's Nutrien-eKonomics.com. Until next time, this has been Mike Howell with The Dirt. Hey guys, if you like what you heard today, do us a favor and share this podcast with someone else. It could be your neighbor, your friend, your crop advisor, or whoever you think would enjoy it. Your support helps ensure future episodes, so please like, subscribe, share, and rate the show wherever you're listening from.